All right, greetings and welcome once again. My name is Imuna Yisrael. This is Solonomics 101, and we have a great conversation for you today. I want to thank you for tuning in. We have Sister Mayanah on the line, as well as Sister Naomi on the line, and we're going to be having a great conversation as it relates to women, the scriptures, our roles, and different things of that nature. So once again, thank you for joining in, and if you're enjoying this broadcast, feel free to share. So I want to go to Sister Mayanah at first. If you can, please tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and just give us a little bit of insight on who you are.
Okay, well, shalom, this is Mayanah. Thank you for inviting me. About me, well, as some of you know, I began studying as an Israelite at about 18. I embraced this cultural identity almost 22 years ago. I don't subscribe to labels or chants. I find them both divisive. I belong to the entire congregation of Israel. Every member is eligible to keep me accountable. I consider only Torah as law, but I recognize all Hebrew writing as history, literature, prophecy, and poetry is valid for instructing us on how our ancestors thought, lived, and practiced. So I self-identify simply as an Israelite with no add-ons or qualifiers. I speak primarily to women about women because I believe that women have been underserved in terms of proper education on how to accomplish otherwise abstract objectives like virtuous and submissive and humble. Consequently, we're making predictable but avoidable errors in our lives as Hebrews. But I'm really excited to be here and talk about the issues that matter to and affect us as sisters.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. That was Sister Mayanah, and like I said, I see the right things and the things that she shares, and they're very thought-provoking and intriguing, and I thought it would be a great conversation to have her on. We also have on the line Sister Naomi. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And you joined in the conversation, and again, hopefully we can do these type of conversations again and again and get more sisters on the line to share in this capacity. So if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself. And, the floor is yours.
Shalom, shalom. My name is Sister Naomi, and I'm just here just to join in the conversation, great conversation, to just hear, how we could further assist our sisters in Israel who's hurting and just might need some more direction as where to go and how to go about, dealing with self and dealing with their partners. So I'm just here to listen and just add on where I can.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. So we'll get started with Sister Mayanah. I mean, the conversation just got popping before we started recording, and I had to say pause. So can we pick up now at some of the stuff? Can we preface some of the things that we were just speaking about just a little bit so that the listeners can understand the context of why it's important for women to, or why do you feel that it's important for women to address the scriptures in a certain way, or whether or not you do think is important. So if I didn't confuse the question too much, how do you approach it, and why do you find value in it, and why do you think other women should look into this way of which to relate to the text?
In terms of interrogating and addressing and making use of our biblical canon, it's important to understand it as a historical tool. You have to understand that the Bible is not, you have to resist the impulse to put it back in a religious context. We tend to treat the Bible as if it's something that existed in a vacuum, like the people discussing it existed in a vacuum. But the fact is that if we understand and accept and truly believe that this is a historical text, that all these things really happened, and these are real people and real facts, we should be able to extract them from the biblical canon and cross-reference them with other historical contexts. And in that way, we flesh them out and make them more three-dimensional. And we can address them and interact with them and assess them better, because these are people, these are our ancestors that we need to be able to relate to and learn from. If we keep them in this box and we make them this untouchable, unrelatable kind of figment from the past that we can't touch them, that these are not going to be useful people to us. They have to be things that we can flesh out, people we can flesh out and say, okay, that person hurt like I do. That person had a moment of fear like I do. This person had a moment of doubt like I do. And we need to be able to access these ancestors in that very intimate way because we are relying on them in such an intimate manner. It doesn't help you when I say Scripture says this, that, and the third. If for you that's all pixie dust and land far, far, far away. It doesn't matter to you. I need to be able to say, our ancestor Sarah left this record for you. This is how she handled this. According to Scripture, this is how she handled this. When I say according to Scripture, I'm referring to a record of what our ancestors have done, and this is something you can look at, reflect on, and respond to. And I think that's the approach that we need to have when it comes to all of our records. I feel like that has to happen with all of our records. I know that right now we're fragmented and fractured, and we privilege certain records over other records. But I feel like when we're talking about our ancestors, what they did, what they thought, how they lived, what they practiced, those things we have to look at holistically.
I think that's interesting that you speak about looking at the characters, and this is how I approach it, our forefathers and foremothers in a more three-dimensional way, because when we refer their behaviors and the things that they have done, oftentimes I hear it being said, well, such and such did it, and I'm going to do it this way. Not looking at the consequences of what such and such did, not looking at, like you said, the reality of what may have been going on with such and such, so that even if they did it and I know it ended in this way, that I can take that to say, you know what, I can maybe make another choice or do it in a different way. And I see it often when it is that we want to validate our inappropriate behaviors. We use the text in this way to, like I said, to make it all right. What do you have you experienced that in particular, even just how men relate to women or women relate to men, and when we see our forefathers, well, such and such did this, so that makes it okay. Have you experienced that, and what can you talk about the way in which we use our foreparents to excuse the behaviors that we perpetuate even to this day?
Absolutely. In terms of our, and I won't generalize say all of our men, but too many and a certain number of our men have adopted a really strange position. Rather than looking at our ancestors, because right now they get introduced. First of all, we have to recognize that the men come into this understanding completely different than the women come into this understanding. They are introduced on a totally different track than we are. They are introduced to this as you are powerful, you are validated, you are important, you are a king, you have authority, you have power. They get all of that. The women come in completely different. I won't even get into that particular track. A lot of us know it all throughout. But since we're talking about the men, I wanted to set that foundation first. That's the foundation that they come in on. So unfortunately, now you have all of these men that have previously been disenfranchised, undervalued, underappreciated for so long, and they're certainly told all these amazing things about themselves, which are true. But now they're adopting really foreign concepts. They're thinking, okay, all of a sudden, these men have authority. All of a sudden, these men have power. All of a sudden, these men have things they're not used to. So what do they have to emulate? This is where we run into a problem. Do they emulate Abraham, son of Terah, or do they emulate Abraham Lincoln? They emulate Abraham Lincoln. They hear authority, and they think about who was an authority to them and how they use authority. So they're emulating the government. They're emulating the police department. They're emulating all the people who rejected, oppressed, and devalued them. So that's what they think authority looks like. Now, the people that they have authority over are their women. So instead of treating us the way Abraham, son of Terah, treated his women, they treat us the way the government treated them. And they think authority means oppression. They think authority means silence. They think authority means diminishing and devaluing. And so that's how they treat their women. And again, we're talking about a particular segment of men, not all men, and not all of the brothers are like this. But the ones that we're finding so much pushback from are coming in with that psychology, and they're coming in from that position. And that's how we're finding that there's so much pushback from them. So
very interesting. Go ahead.
We try not to. So we don't want to be discouraged and feel like we have to not deal with the men, but we have to understand them. We have to understand where they're coming from, and we have to be realistic about what we are dealing with. We cannot go into this blindly with all of these concepts tucked under our arms, thinking, we have a pocketbook full of positivity that we can't live up to. And it doesn't exist in the reality that we're facing. So we have to be realistic about our environment in order to survive it. And before we started recording, I said to you that we have to pay attention to the things that these men are saying to us.
Agreed.
We said, I gave the example before, if a man says to you from the outset he has no intention of being faithful to you, you need to pay attention to that. Don't think it's going to change. He's telling you from the beginning where he stands and what his position is. You have to deal with the reality of what is being said to you. Similarly, if a man you are talking to tells you you are not qualified to speak to him on these matters of Scripture, if he's telling you from the outset that you do not have the credentials for this communication, do not feel like you are going to get through to him. Do not engage in a conversation or discourse with a man who is telling you from the beginning he's going to devalue everything you said. It's only going to frustrate you.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Do you think most of our women make that sorely mistake to think that, I could change him. He says this, but there's hope. I think I could do this, or I think I could do that. You think most of our women go in, with eyes wide shut, thinking that I could make a change and that would have an adverse effect on our relationship or on the woman herself?
Absolutely. Women there's a lot of things wrong with the psychology of black women, unfortunately. One of the things that I find particularly problematic is that we have adopted this really weird, dysfunctional, maladaptive, mindset of ride or die chick. That is the most insane, counterproductive, countercultural concept I've ever heard in my life. There is nothing about being a ride or die chick that is beneficial to the woman involved in that or the man she thinks she is being supportive to. That's not what we do. Because what that means is that what we do when we take on that mindset is that we create a very permissive environment. We say to our men, it is that there's this threshold that you haven't passed, and it's okay. It's okay. We don't really expect you to ascend past this threshold anyway. So instead of expecting you to reach your potential, strive for your potential, or build your potential, I'm okay with this level that you have decided not to ascend past. And there's something really cool about me because I've done that. There's nothing cool about you having done that. Asshole. It's actually countercultural. Counter everything the scriptures tell us we are supposed to do. There is no culture, not one race of people, not one nationality, no other woman on the planet has no expectations of their men. None. Because Jewish women only want doctors and lawyers, those men become doctors and lawyers. Because Asian women expect CEOs and men to be successful, those men are successful. But because we say it is okay for our men not to ascend past a certain point, our men don't believe in themselves anymore. We stopped believing in them. We stopped pushing them. We started accepting that when we expect things of our men, that we're nagging them. That's a problem. We don't think that they need to provide for us. It's okay for us to provide for them. So and because we have been made so afraid of emasculating them, we have infantilized them. They're babies, and we don't want them to grow. They're infants. The things that we expect from our sons, we don't even expect from our men anymore. Our children are not allowed to not go to school. Our children are not allowed to cry. If your son tomorrow fell and decided to cry, you would say, boy, suck it up. You don't have time to cry. But when our men whine all day long, we let them. We let them. We put titles on their behinds and say, you know what, it's okay. But we don't do that to our little boys. We don't let them not protect their little brothers and sisters. Our sons have to learn to be protectors. And, when mommy's not in the house, make sure everything is okay. We put that on our sons. But we have nothing for our men. And then we wonder why. They have no ambition. Their women gave up on them.
Wow. We're on the line right now with Mayanah, Sister Mayanah. She's dropping it right now. I'm going to get to chill. I love it. I'm over here like, yeah. I get to take a little break while she's breaking it all the way down. We're also on the line with Sister Naomi, and we're having this conversation that I think needs to continue on in so many different aspects right now. We're just looking at Sister Mayanah sharing her view, a lot of which in my research and studies and just assertion of what's going on, a lot of it is very much accurate for what has happened or the current state that we're in. And right now where I'm at is, well, how did it get this way? You know what I'm saying? We know that it's written of in Deuteronomy 28 and Leviticus 26. We know that these things were said to be. But now, what actually happened in slavery? And that's where I am personally in going back into the black woman, the so-called black woman, and her slave experience. And what were some of the things, not just a few things that they just throw out there to us, but what was her daily life like? What did she experience? How did her mind become conditioned that it became imprinted on her DNA to have that expectation or no expectation? You understand? So that we can really see what our forefathers, because sometimes we reach way back into the Torah. And then our recent history is all around us, but we neglect it. So Ima Sarah wasn't in the same position as Sarah the slave. You understand what I'm saying? Those two, they are eons apart. You know what I mean? They are lifetimes apart, and they don't share the same experience. And neither did Father Abraham share the same experience as Abraham or Samuel the slave, or because a lot of our foreparents were named after biblical names in recent times. And what they would have experienced to say, okay, now closer. This is what they were before the exposure. And now after the exposure, after the degradation, after the oppression, and I'm glad that you brought out the point that those who were oppressed now have become the oppressors. I had that conversation a few days ago. And what is happening, not all, but many of our men now have become, like you said, like onto the oppressor, the recent oppressor. And I'm going to deal with you and invalidate you. And in doing so, the nation cannot move forward. Because the family unit, the relationship between the man and the woman is so severely damaged that it cannot keep the house up. So again, for those who have just joined us, this is a very interesting conversation. I'm going to go ahead and drop back now again and keep listening in. So, Sister, floor is yours.
I have a more like as a statement or a question. And, with what was just being said, and we talked about the men have now become oppressors and oppressors over a woman, which is actually true. The question is this unbeknownst to them? Do they realize that they're in an oppressive state and that they're causing oppression on the woman? Or do they think that this is validated by Scripture? As you said, Sister Anne, and they wake up, you hear that you're a king, you're on a higher state, you've been elevated to this higher state coming in. And how does a woman come in? We come in more under a subservitude, manner or a lower manner. So do they know this is what they're doing?
From my observation, because obviously as all women, I can only speak from a point of observation. But from what I've observed with our men, it seems that I don't think that all of it is intentional. I think a lot of it comes from this is what they were told, so this is how they respond. I don't think that they are necessarily, and in all cases, maliciously misleading. I think they honestly don't know the difference. They themselves have been so patently misinformed. So I don't. Again, I'm cautious to say that a lot of, even the ones that we're discussing right now, even among them, that there are those who sincerely believe that they are doing something wrong. I think that because they come in believing that there's this righteous indignation on their part, that they have the purview and the reason to be harsh and demeaning to us. And it comes from the people that brought them in. They look to their leaders and these other Israelite men that they consider elders and leaders, and they see that this is what they're saying. And then what makes it worse is that they kind of live in this vacuum where all they hear is each other's voices. There's no room for dissent or disagreement in these boxes, which is one of the reasons that I'm not a fan of camps, because they tend to discourage conversation. They discourage questions. You're not allowed to really question other people who have been given or appointed authority amongst their ranks, which is it's stifling, and it is a very hot, it's a hotbed for a mob mentality that just, and it sounds like that's what we come up against. Everybody's called my elders, so and so General blah 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 said. And I said, okay, great. And when I want to ask you what Scripture says, all you have for me is General so and so said, and I don't just take me to your leader. There's no point talking to your drone, and that is what we're faced with. So, to the question of do they know what they're doing, I don't think so. I think it's only because I feel like, in my experience, they parrot each other. They're not. If you ask them, if you really try to interrogate their thoughts and ask them why they think what they think, they don't know. They'll give you scriptures completely out of context. They will isolate, like the sister alluded to earlier. They will isolate an event and take it and just kind of airlift it out of its context, out of its consequence, out of its end result, and say this, and they just kind of rapid fire shoot verses at you, irrespective of whether or not there's any perspective. And what happens is that's an extremely fatal shot to a woman who has already been discouraged from reading on her own. If we have sisters who have not read the text, a lot of that sounds good, especially if it comes at you that hard and that fast and from that many people. It's really hard to get from under that. In the same way, it's really hard for men to break away from that kind of approach when it's so popular. Everybody else is doing it. There's no one to tell you that it's wrong. And the only people that have a problem with it are the women, and the women are wicked, so I don't have to listen to them.
So with that being said, what are some suggestions that you have or could present so, we're able to maneuver around this or even, to assist? Because this is an issue, and it's a great issue in Israel. We all know that. So how do we move from this point to this point? How? How do we get from under men who the women are insubordinate to? How do we have a voice without us being demeanor if we say, oh, you shut up? How do you fix that? Where do you go from here? How do we heal?
This is what I do, and it's controversial, and I'm fine with that because I'm pretty much fine with the decisions that I make. And it's controversial among the sisters in my peer group that have been in the culture 20 years or more. I, for the most part, don't talk to married women. For the most part, I don't deal directly with married women unless they have permission from whom they're accountable to, or they ask me something very, very specific. But in general, I don't teach married women, but I do teach other women. I've broadened that as it relates because the other elder sisters have gotten on me for being so limited, but I feel that it's safer for me. But it's for me not to impose on established households, because what I'm going to say will very likely poke all kinds of holes in that household. So I don't, as a rule, do that. Right? If I say what I have to say, I say it on my wall in a group that I belong in. I'm very, very general. I try to address single sisters. I'm very But to answer your question, what happens, the reason I do that is because I think at this point, what's most important and the most valuable approach for us is to inform the women. Because as I stated earlier, one, the men are not listening. They're just not. Not to any substantial degree. Now, I personally know a lot of very intelligent, open-minded, embracing brothers, which is why I am very hesitant to speak very, very, in very broad, very general terms, because there are a lot of grown, mature, intelligent men among us, and that should be emphasized and that should be said. And unfortunately, it's the ones that are wrong and just loud that are the ones that are most visible and vocal, and the ones that are helpful and encouraging are kind of quietly doing what they're supposed to be doing. So this is what I do, to get back to the actual question. I think that it's important to inform the women. Why? Because if the women start having standards and keeping standards, the men will do that. Why? For the same reason why if a Jewish woman says, all I want are doctors and lawyers, you cannot marry a Jewish woman that's a doctor or lawyer, the men become doctors and lawyers. If the women say, you cannot come like a Hebrew with a hustle because you have a Hebrew name, you can quote Deuteronomy 28. That's not good enough. The men will up the game. If the women stop falling for things that don't make any sense, the men will stop saying things that don't make any sense. They'll stop, but they won't stop if they can get away with it. The women have to say, that's not good enough for me. You can't give me the D and tell me that we're married. I know better. They'll stop running game if it doesn't work. For as long as the women are saying, I'm going to fall for this, they're going to continue to give it to you. So if the women stop, understand that I'm not advocating for dissension among the men. Absolutely not. I'm not saying for there to be some huge wave of women who are going to create a barricade against the authority and amazingness of the men. Absolutely not. Instead, what I am saying is that these women need to know what their purpose is. We keep telling them that they have a purpose. We keep telling each other we're important. We have a value. We're the Most High's daughter. Woo-woo. Okay, so you know what? We're patting ourselves on the back. We have no idea what we're talking about. None. How do you do it? How do you do it? First thing, we have to, this word, okay, I'm going to bring this up because this is very important to me. This word helpmate and helpmeet, please get rid of it. Absolutely get rid of it. This is a word that is the reason why none of us as a whole know what we're doing. Because the first thing we were told is that we are supposed to be a helpmeet for him. The most your job is. Your job, when you were created, when he made you, was to make you a helpmeet for him. That's a sentence. That's a phrase. Where do you get help me? You're not going to know what you need to do if you don't even know what the language is. Help me, not the language. It's not even in the scriptures. Why are we saying that? Oh, I want to be a good helpmate. Good luck with that. I don't know what that is. Just say you want to be a good unicorn. I don't know what helpmeet is. And until you understand what these words mean and what the Most High told you to do, you can't do it. You can't do it.
And that is agreed upon. I just want to say we are on fire right now. We're on the line having a very important conversation. You know, Amuna got to come in there and do the little, for those who just joined this definitely is Solonomics 101. We're having a sisters discussion. And definitely we know that males and brothers will be listening in. So understand this is not anything that is to go against or bashing of any kind, but the reality is that we have to identify what is allowing us or hindering us from going forward as a nation. And as Sister Mayanah is saying, we have to be able to identify the roles of a woman, not according to what a man interprets them to be, but according to what the Creator has made them. Conversely, we have to identify the roles of a man so that when we are in those roles, we'll lessen the dysfunctionality of our existence. So this is a very important conversation. Please let's not get up in our feelings. We're going into these very touchy areas to uncover a very important question that was just on the table. And so I just want to go ahead and just put that in there. And then go ahead, sister. The floor is yours. And then after you finish, then I'll also submit my thoughts, because you said a lot of some of the very things that I wanted to say, but I have some more. So go ahead and finish up.
I'll finish this point. I want to hear your thoughts, but I want to finish this point about in the beginning. And because I think that in order for us to go anywhere in the future, we do have to revisit it, understand in the beginning. Now, in the beginning, after the first creation in Genesis 1, we get Genesis 2, where we find that after this is such an important thing, and I wonder how many of us really pay attention. Prior to this point in Genesis 2, the Most High created all these things, and everything was good. And he created this, and it was good. He created that, and it was good. The very first time something is not good, is a man is alone. And he said the man was alone, and he said it is not good for man to be alone. Big deal. Huge deal. All creation is done. All of a sudden, something is not good. And at that point, does he give his son a woman? No, he doesn't. No, he does not. What the Most High does is revolutionary, and we should pay attention to this detail. Instead of giving him a woman, he brings every beast in creation to him for what? Are we allowed to involve ourselves in bestiality? Did he really think that Adam was going to find a mate from the monkeys and the bears and the lions? So why did he do that? What the Most High did was he brought everything in creation to Adam's feet. Adam looked at that animal. Now, you know when you name something? Have you ever had to name something? Have you ever had to name a child, name a puppy? A lot of thought goes into that. You think about it. You take time. You're considering a lot of things when you name something. So Adam named everything in creation. And at the end of that, finds that nothing is suitable. You understand what the Most High did there? He took his son and showed him there is nothing in all of creation good enough for you. Nothing in all of creation that's appropriate suit or meat for you. And then he gave his daughter. You see that? That's when he gave his daughter. Not at the point where Adam had, he waited till Adam understood completely that there was nothing else out there for him. And then he gave his daughter. And told him. And we learned from the Most High that he said, I'm going to make her worthy, suitable, and appropriate, as a worthy, suitable, and appropriate help for him. That's what a helpmate is. You were just saying that after everything was shown to him was not worthy, suitable, appropriate, then there was you. That's what your job is. That's who you are. So no, you don't get to be a ride or die chick. No, you don't get to sit back and powder his butt when he's not doing what he's supposed to do. That's not your job. The Most High already said it's not good for him to be alone. So if you're not speaking, you're not doing, you're not interceding, you're not helping, then he's alone. He's all by himself. You are not doing your job. You feel me?
Cain, that's an interesting thought that you just brought out as it pertains to the help me. That's like a whole thing in itself to really begin to define. Yeah, to be able to define, because a lot of women are being, like I said, the roles are being redefined by men as according to what is going to make me most comfortable in this situation. So, for instance, if I don't want to hear you, which the Most High made the woman a communicator, and she's supposed to communicate information, and if I don't want to hear you, now I'm going to make it illegal for you to talk. Because in that communication, the righteous communication, and let's flip it on the other side, and just to speak to the help me, like you said, you have to go into the Hebrew of that word azir, kanibdo, meaning a help in front of him, or aid, a rescue. And when you look at the word in the context in the Torah, a lot of the time, the word is used towards the help that the Most High has onto man. So what was created wasn't, like you're saying, a ride or jive chip or a jump off or a shorty. What was created wasn't just a simple woman. It was one, that's why they said a good man, if he wants a good woman, will help him to accomplish his goals and his desires. Consequently, a wicked woman will make sure that nothing get done. So her job is very important, and she has to sometimes understand that we are getting the descriptions told to us not by what you were designed to be, but by what someone has redesigned you into. Because if you, and I like what you said, that you have to raise the bar. And I've been saying this. You can ask Sister Nicole on the phone. I've been saying this for years. If the women raise the bar, men are not children. Let's get that straight. So you cannot badger them into compliance. And this actually makes them more resentful. You understand what I'm saying? You cannot nag them into submission. That makes them more resentful. But what you can do is raise your bar of expectation, as well as women who are expecting all of these things of men but are not willing to give. That also is out of order. You understand what I'm saying? So irregardless, like I teach my children, such and such is not doing things. Well, you do what you need to do. And so it's like no one is getting ready because I'm waiting on you to put your pants on. I'm waiting on you to put your skirt on. No, you get ready and do what it is that you need to do. You understand? And we see some of those examples with our foremother. And some will say, you know, some of the tactics that they used was whatever the case may be. But I kind of try to look at it in layman's terms like a pilot and a co-pilot. Just because I'm a co-pilot does not mean I don't know how to fly the plane. You understand? It just means it's not my primary job to fly the plane. But if anything jumps off, you better believe I know how to fly the plane. You understand what I'm saying? And so the woman is responsible and needs to know how to do things. And in recent times, because of the conditions that we have been in, she has had to do these things. She has had to be the breadwinner. She has had to go to the forefront and be the protection, not because she necessarily wanted to, but because of the conditions of the courses forced her into that position. For this also, the men are resentful of the women. So we have to be able to put all of this dirty laundry out on the table. I know it stinks. It got some crust all up in it. You understand what I'm saying? And it's funky. But take it out and look at it for what it is. When the men, like I was watching recently, after slavery, and they went to the chain gangs, and you see 90% of the prison population in the late 1800s is black men, then my question is, well, who's at home with the children? You understand what I'm saying? Who's holding it down? Who's making sure they eat? For this, because the man, oftentimes his ego is bruised because he wants to be a provider if he's grown in a certain way, and he feels less than because he's not able to do this. Instead of dealing with what got me in this situation, I'm going to project my indifference onto you. And a lot of times the women now become the punching bag, proverbially, and some physically. Emotionally, they become the dumping center for, I'm not feeling good, but then she has nowhere. So now she's riddled with fibroids, and she's riddled with womb issues, and she's riddled with diseases. Why? Because all of the weight and the pressure from dysfunctionality based on let's not forget where the source is coming from, our stepping away from divine order. You understand? And because we have done that now, we'll have this big mess. And this conversation is very important. And I just don't know right now, you know what I'm saying? I'm loving it because healing, before we can get to healing the issue, before we can get to what is the remedy, we have to identify what is the problem. You know, and so this is an on-point conversation. If anybody has anything to say, you know, I'm getting a little hype right now, so I'm going to fall back. For those who've just joined us, this is Soul Anonymous 101. My name is Imuna Yisrael. We're hosting a panel of very eloquently spoken women who are bringing forth information of what's really going on in our nation so we can get to the what, so we can better understand the why, and then know what to do from there. Again, the floor is open. The floor is yours.
Sister Muna, yes, I totally is in agreement with what you're saying. And before we get to the why, we have to address the what. And the question is, what is the problem? So now, Sister Mayanah, you did mention about educating the woman, and that's good. And I agree that the woman should be educated, but then because the men are not listening. But at some point, how do we get to them? Because they too have to hear, so we could have a balance. So now the scale is going to be one-sided because the woman gets educated and they're empowered and they're doing what they're supposed to do, which they should. But at the same time, the Creator is not the author of confusion. You know, He created us both to come together, to be one, to be unison, and to put forth His work, because it is about the Creator's work and what we should do for Him. So what suggestions do you have as to the what question as it pertains to our men of Israel and how we answer that?
Every action has an opposite. And opposite and equal reaction. That's the law of nature. So if women offend, men will offend by default because they have no choice. It is not good for men to be alone. So if women get to a point where they are establishing a standard, the men will have to respond in kind because there's nothing else to do. There's no way to reach us if they don't. Like, what are you dealing with? Okay, so let's go back and look at it this way. We know why the Most High chose Israel. Why our records say that the Most High chose us. The records say that the Most High chose Israel not because we were anything amazing, but because we were little. We were small and not so amazing. At the time that we were developing, there are other nations that are doing really big things on the political stage. And Israel is not in terms of doing anything globally. We're doing things for ourselves and establishing and becoming things internally. So the Most High says, I'm going to use you because you're little. And when you go up against all these big people, they're going to know it's not you. They're going to want to know what you're dealing with. Who's your God? Who are you worshiping? That you can come and look at us with that much confidence and handle your business the way you do. Who's behind you? That's the position the women are in. The women are not in the most powerful positions. The women are not in the positions of authority. The women are not the ones on the forefront. That's not our job. But our job is to be worthy, suitable, and appropriate and opposite of our men. That's our job. Our job is for our men to look at us, and they're supposed to see their reflection. Opposite doesn't mean in opposition to. It doesn't mean that we're being contrary to them. It means that when they look at us, they should see their reflection. They should see, looking back at them, everything they're supposed to be and can be. That's what we should all, instead of us feeding them so much negativity about who they aren't yet and all the things they're doing wrong. If we're doing right and they look at us and we're supposed to be them, they're going to, what are our women dealing with? Even if they want to fight against us, they're going to have to interrogate what we're saying in order to argue with us. So they see that we are doing what we're supposed to do. They're going to want to be who they used to do that. That's not that false. I don't have to go into the Bible to show you that. I can go into the 50s and show you that. When the women had standards, when you couldn't sleep with a black woman, they would be like, you know what? I know that I'm not going to get it from this black woman. I'm going to get it from the white girl, but I'm going to marry that black woman. Remember? You guys remember that, right? They would go out and they would go and do all that dirty nonsense with white women and come home and marry that black girl who wasn't going to do it. So we stopped. We listened when they said, y'all better get on your game. Because white girls are doing this and white girls are doing all kinds of stuff. And you're going to lose black men to these white girls. All we lost were our husbands. Because, yeah, we're a jump off too now. Yeah, we're good for a slow stroke to a slow jam on a slow night, like the white girls. But now they're not coming home to marry us anymore. Problem. When the women lowered their standards, the men lowered their expectations. It's a problem.
Wow, Kane, thank you for that one. And I just wanted to, I like that when women lower their expectations, men, their standards, men lower their expectations. It is true. And another thing that also 2 points that I wanted to say is that there was a barrier. There was something that was the women had that also reminded them of the expectation, which was the family unit. So when the man approached the woman, see, when we stepped away from divine principles and we stepped up into free land, you understand, we begin to fall away from the things that protected us. So you could not approach her in that manner unless you came correct. Because in case she got into the hole, it got into her head and she was all in love and puppy love, you still had to go through the family in order to get to her. But now you can see a shorty, she came off the street, she got on some ZTs. I don't have to go through nobody. I just have to call her 2 times and tell her, turn to Deuteronomy, let's do some Bible study. Boom. Next thing you know, that's what it is. So the whole structure of the way in which we relate to one another has been decayed. And in doing so, because oftentimes women do, that's why you had because we wander in our mind and thoughts. And certain things that we see, we choose not to see. And this is one of the issues that causes us to continue to be like, man, I did it again. Because where the man is linear thinking, no, don't you see X, Y, and Z that? We're like, no, but I see this. And once that love hormone kicks in, it takes you to another place. So these things where it is that it may not be your father or mother who's in this way, but where we value the respect and the words or the counsel, and we take counsel on matters. We don't want to do that anymore. But we have to return back to that. I was talking to an elder who was talking about that, where you run people through. You do background checks. Don't get so caught up into people before you do your homework. Because the families would have done the homework. When you look at people like to say African, Pan-Africanist, and when you look at a lot of the culture, you cannot just bring somebody to the family. They go in on that person. Where are they from? Who are their people? Do they have schizophrenia? What is good with you? You will not marry my child. We have stepped so far away from that. You'd be like, hey, Dad, hey, Mom, I love him. Like, okay, just send me an invite. We don't value the woman anymore. The family unit doesn't value it because of culture. So we have to get all of those things back. The second thing that I want to say concerning what Nicole was just saying, Sister Nicole, is this. If we look at history within the Torah, we will see when men do not step up to the plate, the Most High said, I will send a sword after you. It's harsh, but that is the reality. So when men do not step up to the plate, you, the woman, make sure you do, because when the sword comes, it's going after the masculine principle. That Zayin that you see today and have been over time is going after that masculine principle, because the Most High knows the mind, that oftentimes, more often than not, when they are in a negative direction, it really takes a high level of humility to turn around. And this is why you see Moshe's meekness was talked about so much. This is why you see the difference between the 10 spies and the 2. You understand? Because of their principle. They're determined in their will. Even if it's dead wrong, they're going to want to do it. And so in the wilderness, I like to say that when you look at when it says that the Most High cut off in the 40 years, and it was women and children, everybody under the age of 20. So those over the age of a certain age were cut off. What does that mean? You had a nation of single mothers. You have a nation of widows who went into the land under Joshua and Caleb. That is what we're seeing today, because the reality is the men, for whatever the way in which, unless they take that time to know themselves and humble themselves, they're going to ride till the wheels fall off. And so I just wanted to add that is what history has borne out to us. And if I know it is hard to want to accept, but it is the reality, and I've experienced it in my own experience of seeing men in different areas. They may know it is wrong, but I'm going to do it till the wheels fall off. And the Most High will have to deal with them at that point. So definitely I'm going to fall back once again as the baby just rolled up in here. So for those who are listening, this is Solar Down 101. My name is Amuna Yisrael, and we are definitely having this conversation. Looks like we're going to have this conversation more than once. At this point, we're just looking at what is going on in the nation from a point of view of experience as well as history. So does anybody have any more questions or comments at this time?
You know, I wanted to add one thing, because we talked briefly about contextually looking at slavery. And what happens is that a lot of the time people like to refer to the Willie Lynch letter, and it's very curiously, because they always talk about there's a point where the women will have to, or the women will be turned against the men. And it's interesting that I'm suspicious that they've never actually read this letter, because in that same line, it says that the men will have to turn against the women. It's not a one-sided thing. It's a two-pronged attack. The men have to. This is the key. It's not us abandoning them does not have the same effect as them abandoning us. And they knew that. So on that same line, in that same statement, they say that the women will abandon the men, but the men will abandon the women. That's important, and I'll tell you why. Because they go on to say that an attachment to that letter, that infamous letter, is the pamphlet of how to make a slave. And in that pamphlet, there's a warning. It's written there. I mean, that's why I'm curious. I don't think people have actually read this document. There's a warning. And it says, and I'll read it to you, it says, furthermore, we talked about paying particular attention to the female savage and her offspring for orderly future planning. Then more recently, we stated, by reversing the positions of the male and female savages, we create an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever, unless a phenomenon occurs and resifts the positions of male and female savages. Our experts warn us about the possibility of this phenomenon occurring, for they say that the mind has a strong drive to correct and recorrect itself over a period of time. If I can touch on something substantial, original historical base, they advise us that the best way to deal with this phenomenon is to shave off the root mentality in order to create a multiplicity of the phenomenon of illusions. I'm going to stop here. Here's what I wanted you to see. That they had this fear, particularly about the black woman. And this is what their fear was, that unless a phenomenon occurs and resifts the position, they know that a woman, the black woman, will naturally re-gravitate to her men. And they were afraid of that. Because what happens is that no matter what you do to a black woman, you're not going to completely break her. And you're not going to make us completely abandon our men, not ever. You know why? Because we make sons. So even if we wanted to forget about our husbands, we have sons. We're never disconnected from our black men because we keep making more. And they were afraid of that. The only thing the men have that are consistently there is us. It's us. And no matter what you do to them, even now when you look at the statistics, black women are less likely to date outside than black men. Black men don't have that connection to us that we have to them. And they want to say, oh, it's not right. They're looking at media, they're looking at whatever. Even these slave drivers were immensely aware of the fact that no matter how much you turn us against our men, what they're calling a phenomenon will occur. And black women will seek their men again. So you have to continuously have this onslaught. So in order for this to be successful, it can't be just an attack on the black women. You're going to have to convince the black men that we're their enemy. Because that's the only way for it to work. Because we're going to return. So they concentrate and implant this nonsense in our men. So our men do the work for them. Because eventually the spell will be broken on us. Because we keep bringing out new black men. We give birth to a new black man every time a white chromosome hit the mix. You know what I'm saying? So it's never going to be the case that you are going to get all the black women against all the black men. But the black men think that for as long as the black men think of us women as repositories for their seed or soil, which is the weirdest, but soil for their seed, is replaceable aspect, incubators, however they're imagining us, they are going to be able to successfully keep us divided.
Well, thank you definitely for that. That was Sister Mayanah. And Sister Nicole, do you have anything to say towards that? Did you have anything else to add to the conversation?
Not at this time, because I'm sorry, because I have to leave. I have to go now. So, but it's a great conversation, and thank you for having me on. I have to depart.
Thank you so much. We're definitely going to have to invite you back and maybe invite some more sisters back to have this very important conversation to be able to, there's so many things. I recently was looking at the roots, and when you look at the root system of a tree, it's not just one root that you see. You understand what I'm saying? So some people will go into argument, well, it's not this, it's that. You know what I'm saying? It's not this, it's that. When in reality, when that root begins to split, it is all of them at different spaces in time. You understand? It is all of it that comes together that converges into what we do see above ground, which is the problem and the fact that the tree is bearing undesirable fruit. I think it's interesting to note that the Torah tells you that this is also part of, the eye of the humble is going to return evil towards, and the man, he's going to have an evil eye towards the wife of his bosom. You understand what I'm saying? So this is the negative energy, which is also known as curses, that I understand that has traveled down based on what we have chosen to do in time. I've read about the Willie Lynch letter, and today is like these days I'm into the narratives of the slaves' experience. And I found it interesting in one of these narratives, in Harriet Jacobs' narrative, she says, she goes into talking about in the incidents of a slave girl, how the slave master would allow the slave man to beat his wife. You understand what I'm saying? And this for him is a level of empowerment, even at that time. Maybe next time I'll pull that portion, but I just thought that was interesting, that the frustration that was felt out there, I'm looking at how much of it even in that time was misplaced on her. How much of it did she bear at that time? And going down now, the children would have grown up seeing this type of abuse, seeing this type of whatever it is that they're experiencing. Also, just basically the tearing apart of, even if that was the person you love, based on somebody else's preference, I'll take you away from that individual and give you to somebody else in their eyesight. So for the man, that's like emasculating. You understand what I'm saying? That you're not mine. You know, I can't really protect you like I need to. And so there's a lot of stuff going on. And lastly, I'll just say I saw the craziest YouTube video of a European saying 10 reasons why she likes dating black men. And this is what's going on. And she has one of our brothers standing next to her. And every reason that she named was for carnality. I like his behind. I like how his brown skin next looked. I'm like, what? I like the way he smells. I like his swag. I like the clothes that he wears. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on here? You understand what I'm saying? And we have so many black quote-unquote black men that have a dislike for who they are, and they're experiencing, because they're in denial generationally within the chromosomes of their experience. There's something built in to the mechanism that says, you know what, I'd rather deal with her. Because all that comes with the repair of what we've been through, I'm not committed to our struggle together. And I would rather deal with someone, and I've heard them say, that's not going to give me the headache that you're going to give me. And I find that very interesting. Go ahead, Tristan.
I'm so, like, that topic makes me so excited. I really wish we had the time to really.
Okay, we're gonna have to plan to come back and hit that all. Just yeah, we're gonna have to come back on that one.
Sorry, Sister Mayanah, it was my pleasure speaking with you, but I'm gonna be departing now. So, Sister Mona, I'll speak to you later.
All right, that's Sister Nicole.
Okay, shalom.
Shalom. Okay, go ahead, sis.
I'm just saying, because the whole time you were saying, I'm like, yeah, because you know what happens? These women don't have any expectations of you. Of course they're not nagging you. I remember there was someone, I had to write this down. We had a conversation on the sisters' post, and these men were making a similar assumption, and it's just like, are you listening to what they value in you? They value your sexual powers. They believe that you're athletic. They're fine when you sit on the couch and do nothing. You know why? Because they were raised to believe you do nothing. So when you sit around doing nothing, that makes sense to them. When you're not articulate or intelligent and you can't put things together, it's cute to them because they don't think you're smart to begin with. They don't have those expectations from you. When they needed something, when they think of provider, they think of daddy. They don't think of you. So when you don't provide anything, it's okay because you don't look like provision to them. When you can't do anything, you mouth off and you're violent, that fits in perfectly with the beast that father told them you were. When you're amazing in bed, that's what the mythology about you is.
And that was one of her points, too. That was one of her points that I just found like, wow, you have been reduced to a piece of meat, and you're okay with that. You're okay with that. So we're going to have to carve out a whole nother show since I'm on the air, invite you to come back because this is like, so many different points and aspects of, like I said, this root system that no one part of it is the totality of the issue. But more and more, especially where I live, it's like common as salt where you see our men, young men, don't even entertain their sisters. You understand? That's a problem. That what is going on in your mind? You understand? And what now is going on in the mind of that woman to say the men of my own nation, my own country don't want me? And how does that affect her self-esteem? You know. So, Stephanie, do you have any last words to say?
No, because I'm going to talk forever if you let me talk forever. So I would really love for you to invite me to that conversation. I would love to be a part of a forum or a panel on that aspect of it. I think that one of the roots to that issue is that men are educated only on the value of the seed, and they don't see how the woman, the wife, and the mother played.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we're going to have to talk about it. Okay, we're going to make it a next time for those who are listening. If you are interested in joining this conversation, please, as you can hear the temperature and the flow of the conversation, we're trying to keep it in a way in which we can convey our thoughts, but also control ourselves emotionally so that what we're saying can be heard. So if you desire to join in that panel conversation, we are going to look at how it is that we are looked at and really dive into the value of, not like you said, not just being the soil, but how this affects your children, how the woman that you pick affects your offspring, and why it is important to be that woman and why it is important for the man to pick the right woman. So with that said, I want to thank you again so much. It's a great, beautiful conversation. My name is Mayanah Yisrael. This has been Solonomics 101. And if you don't know, we have just released a new book, Angry Black Woman Syndrome Revisited, that talks about some of the things we're talking about here, the stereotypes of how we're looked at by our own men. If you go on YouTube, there's no short of videos that speak about the nasty disposition of the so-called black woman and the reasons as to why your men begin to reject you. So if you want more information on that, you can go to www.emunayisrael.com. That's the baby's trying to break up the N. I am a mommy, so please bear with me. Once again, www.emunayisrael.com. I'm on all social media as Mayanah Yisrael, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Sister Mayanah, would you like to share with the people where they can link up to you if they would like to get in contact with you?
Oh, you can absolutely contact me on my Facebook profile. I will have another platform possibly beginning in the next 6 or 7 weeks. I'll be spending less time on Facebook. If you have difficulty adding me, you can, if you're friends with our sister, then you can find me through her, and that would allow you access to me.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for coming in once again, and I pray everybody have a blessed night. Until next time, definitely look out for that forum. We will be coming, raising the bar in Israel. So hallelujah, and good evening.
Greetings, shalom, and welcome. My name is Mayanah Yisrael over at Solonomics 101, bringing you all the insightful information, news, and tips from a Solonomics point of view. Now, I wanted to tell you about a great thing. We just released a book called The Angry Black Woman Syndrome Revisited. Yes, I know it's controversial. We all have a lot to say on the topic. If you haven't checked out the book, please go over to my website and check it out. That's www.emunayisrael.com. You can find me on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, even Periscope. So definitely, I hope to hear from you soon, and let's have this discussion on the angry black woman. See you soon. Shalom.